We're in for a wild night.
Welcome everybody to episode 95 of Born to be Wild, a Wild exclusive Hearthstone podcast where we have fun hanging out with friends, talking about the Wild format of Hearthstone and spotlighting members of the Wild community. I'm your host, as always, Nate Wolf. It is wonderful to be back on another beautiful Friday evening here. I'm joining you from Portland, Oregon, and it has been a long week, but I'm really excited to be back. We've got a really exciting show tonight. I always love these lore episodes, and we try to time them when these new sets come out. And so we've got another one tonight. Should be an absolute blast. Just a quick side note, unfortunately, our good friend Sheep City is a little bit under the weather tonight. And so Sheep is here with us in spirit, but not in voice. So I'm sure we'll be back to business as usual next week. But that being said, I am joined tonight by two of my favorite people. Hydra Sheep, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, coming at you guys from the greater Vancouver area. I'm so glad to be here tonight. There was like the final end of the day, I almost wasn't going to make it. My boss came to me at the end of the day saying, we've got a $200,000 order that's going to be going out and we need it shipped by the end of the day. Second I went and looked at it, there were so many big red X's that I saw instantly, and I had to tell them, hey, you're going to have to wait till next week. I've got podcasting to do. So
I'm gonna need you to work on Saturday. Okay.
Yeah, like, hard pass. So no, I'm so glad that I'm here. Dodge that bullet. I'll deal with that next week. And yeah, just happy to see the both of you guys, and I'm stoked for tonight's show.
Absolutely. And of course, welcome back, resident Loremaster Goliath the Dwarf. How you doing tonight?
Oh, my pleasure to be here as always, and I am very happy to have a work break myself. It's been quite the week for me working at the newspaper here, coming at you from Cascade, Iowa, and this is one of those weeks where, like, just a lot of stuff goes on at once. We have, like, the normal set of stories that we need to have for one paper. Then I also ended up doing two for another one. And then we have two special issues with two stories each that are also, like, due at the that I need to get done. Would have been ideally today. Technically, I have until Monday. But, man, it's been a bit hectic for me here. But I am very glad to be able to take a rest from that and come and talk about some of my favorite topics, sharing lore stories with everybody. Let's gather around the hearth and share some tavern tales.
Hey, that reminds me, can we, like, just a moment of appreciation here. Months ago, you predicted accurately this mini set, and then reiterated your prediction several weeks back, well before the announcement time, and you nailed it spot on. And so just giant shout out to you. Excellent prediction. You put together all the clues, and it was incredible. So a job well done. And
you have no idea how big of a catharsis it was for me when the thing came out, and I was like, yes, I was right. I am a prophet. I am
Goliath the prophet.
Yeah, would you change your title from Loremaster to Prophet?
That's amazing. Yeah, spot on, right on point. That's great. Well, though, for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome aboard. If you're here all the time, well, welcome back. Let me briefly explain how this show works for everyone. We record this podcast live every Friday evening at twitch.tv/borntobewildhs, and the video version of this podcast is then posted to YouTube shortly after. Audio versions are also distributed to all podcast apps. But if you're here tonight and you're watching us live, listening to us live, thank you. Yes, you.
Yes. Hey, thank you everybody for being here tonight. It's really nice. We appreciate interacting with y'all and seeing the chat go, and it's a lot of fun hanging out with everybody. And so, yeah, before we get into tonight's main topic of the show, say a very quick but important thank you to everyone joining us in person, and also to Shokunin and the other patrons of our show, we really appreciate your support, and it means the world to us. If you enjoy the content that we make, please subscribe and comment on the video when it drops on YouTube. That helps us a lot with the algorithms to help other people find us. And then one other quick way that you can help support the show is to leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, or whatever podcast app of choice, as that also, it just helps other people find the show. If you are watching live on Twitch, we do have some emotes that you can unlock by subscribing to the channel. You can do that for free if you've got Amazon Prime, and if not, no big deal at all. We been working with our artist Christina, and you can see there's new artwork up on the screen here for those of you that are joining us live or watching on YouTube, that she made of our mascot Nas in true Alterac form here, which is awesome. And then we'll be working with her on some new emotes as well. Didn't realize that we had unlocked a whole mess of them now that are available, so really excited to be working on that. A couple last housekeeping matters. If you are interested in supporting the show financially, we do have a Patreon that you can contribute to for as little as $1 a month. And then finally, if you're interested in interacting with any of us personally, I mean, of course, aside from the chat here on Twitch, we do have a Discord channel. For those of you not familiar, it's basically an online community type program. We've made some great friends from all across the whole world, and we laugh and joke, we share deck lists and memes and have a great time. It's very positive and very little drama, and so that's always a fun place. If you're looking for links to those things, they can be found at our website, which is borntobewildhs.com, and links to all that stuff there. Okay, so housekeeping aside, let us jump into quickly the news and then into our main topic. So Hydra, what do we got for us in store for tonight?
Well, basically for our news this week, we have the mini set. It has now dropped. There's some other cosmetics and mercs and whatnot that are now in the store if you want to pick those things up. But yeah, our biggest thing that actually can possibly affect Wild is the fact that the mini set is now available. If you haven't grabbed it yet, you can use your hard-earned gold or hard-earned dollars to purchase this. I have not pulled the trigger on the golden version of this because to me up here in Canada, it was $87.99 to purchase if you wanted these cards in gold. Oof. And that, I mean, I've bought some things from the store before. That's an understatement. But for a mini set to pay $87.99 seemed a little steep, so I've held off for the time being. I just got the regular version.
You could get a full AAA game for that much.
I that is exactly what I thought, Goliath. I had recently purchased Elden Ring, and I actually did it for free because I got a gift card from my work. But I was thinking that is a AAA title price, right? So I couldn't exactly justify it myself. But how about you guys? Have you grabbed these new cards yet? Have you had a chance to play any of them?
Yes, I bought it in gold, but like, man, they really get you in the wallet, because it wasn't like, this thing came out and then, oh, by the way, there's a bundle with some new cosmetics. Oh, by the way, there's some new battleground stuff. Oh, by the way, there's new mercs. And it's like, oh my gosh, can you like trickle it out instead of dumping it all at once would be nice. I mean, I love having the content, though. That being said, I actually think, while I love the idea of the mini set being available in all gold, if the cards are not played in Wild, like typically I'll craft gold cards if I know that they're playable in meta decks or something that I really want. But like blinging out a whole bunch of stuff that like may not see any play at all, maybe it's questionable. I mean, I like that there's the option. So it's cool. I've been super busy at work this week. It's felt like 2 weeks jammed into one, which I know I keep saying that every week, but that's kind of where we're at right now. I played a little bit with it, though. The new Kazaka's Dragon is kind of fun, and I played with a couple of the other cards, but hopefully I'll get some time to jam a whole bunch of games this weekend and maybe have a better feel for it for next week's show. Goliath, have you got this or played with any of it yet?
I did the exact opposite of rather than buying the golden cards, I bought the set with gold.
Hey, that's
Smart move.
the
Very
better approach,
economical.
But no, like I have like strict budget that, but I made a New Year's resolution to like be very careful and keep track of things with budget and set limits for myself and entertainment categories and all that stuff. So no, what I do is I saved up for a while, and thankfully, hitting the let the tail end of the rewards track and then the 50 afterwards really helped me with that. So I was able to get them all day one as soon as it was available. I haven't found very many, particular uses for a lot of them, but I've also been spoiled with so many deck lists in the Born to Be Wild Discord that I've almost kind of forgotten how to build some myself. But I have had one fun thing that I came up with where for the Kazukan deck, I came up with the idea of using him and Lady Prestor in one, with Polkelt. So I put Polkelt in there, and I don't have any cards higher cost than those two. So I draw them out, then I play Lady Prestor. She turns every minion into a dragon, so I can get all the dual stuff without having to limit the actual deck that I built to all the minions being dragons. That's about the extent of what I've done so far. But no, I am so much that I don't want to spend money on the cosmetics of in Hearthstone as much as I absolutely love the way that it looks, that I recently have gone back to my old strategy of now that I'm resubscribing to World of Warcraft right now, of grinding out enough gold in the game where I can buy the tokens that other people buy and sell in the auction house in the game that you can either redeem for game time or for like $15 on the Blizzard shop. So by grinding enough gold in World of Warcraft, I can translate into real money to buy things in Hearthstone if I have enough left over.
Nice.
So
May I ask a question about your subscription? Are you going month to month, or did you buy a chunk?
I go month to. I bought 1 month with the idea that then I keep on getting the tokens that can keep paying for every other month, and if I'm good enough, then I get more a surplus tokens that I can put in that I can spend on Hearthstone stuff. That's
That makes
legitimately how I bought Cobalt and Catacombs pre-order one time.
That
Wow.
totally makes sense. Yeah, I was asking because I didn't understand when I was gifted a whole bunch of stuff to my account, because I have one of those, like I have a subscription, but it's like I pay every 6 months for World of Warcraft. And they dumped all this free Hearthstone stuff on me, like out of the blue, all these packs, the reward track benefits, like all this stuff onto all my accounts. And I had no idea where it came from. And I was like, where's all this free stuff coming from? But it was so much. It, like, if you play WoW and continue to play WoW, the 6-month subscription is really cool because you get a lot of Hearthstone stuff.
Yeah, they especially put those deals in during times where there's not a lot going on in the game and people need a little more incentive to make a long-term investment in a lot of game time.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, some people consider it great stuff. Others consider it real sketchy business material that, you're trying to trick us into playing a game we don't really want to play. But, regardless, it's if you enjoy the stuff in both games like I do, then it's a pretty good deal. I just trying to do the ultimate saving money strategy.
Yeah. No, that's smart. Hey, before we jump into the lore section tonight, we do have one other piece of news that I do want to share. Our good friend Blue Train has started this movement, if you want to call it, hosting the Wild Hearthstone People's Choice Awards of 2021. And so I'll put the link in chat here. We'll have the link to a brief video and the link to the voting in our show notes as well. But the idea here is looking back at content creators over the years, over this past year, and kind of appreciating. And Blue Train has got a whole list of different categories here for wild streamers and content creators and personalities and deck innovators and the like. And it's really exciting. I mean, I love the idea of celebrating, giving back to the community. So for those of you watching live or listening later, if you can take a minute to check out this link here, vote. There's, I don't know, maybe a dozen questions or so. It takes maybe a minute to fill out. I have to say, we were honored to be nominated for a category as our podcast, and I think I'm on there as well in a different category. And so not that you have to vote for us, but like, hey, it'd be nice. There's a link. Blue Train posted a link to the tweet in chat. I posted a link to the Google form right there if you want to jump to it and fill it out. It's again very quick, but it's awesome, and we'll be working together to share the results of the awards live here on Twitch in a couple of weeks. So I believe the plan is for March the 4th, 2 weeks from today, to host this here on Born to be Wild, and we can announce the winners. Blue Train will join us, and it'll be a lot of fun. It should be an absolute blast. So yeah, if you take a minute and check it out, that'd be awesome. And again, it's just the idea of community in general is very near and dear to our hearts on the show. And so absolutely love the idea. So, big shout out to Blue Train for putting this together. Love the idea. And yeah, if everyone can take a minute and submit a vote, that'd be awesome as well. So yeah, thank you all much. And that is it for our news. And we jump into the main section of tonight's show. We are going to be talking about some lore tonight, in particular, the Black Dragonflight. So we're looking at this mini set, and we're talking about, they've patterned it after like a raid of Onyxia's Lair. And I know we had touched on some of that previously when we talked about Stormwind and Alterac and stuff. But now that we've got these other dragons, like there's a whole family here, and some really interesting story going on. So I'm really excited to hear about it tonight. The bulk of what we'll be talking about are these dragons, although I think there's one card in particular that we want to hit first, because there's some lore there that is kind of unlike the rest of it. So
that's correct.
Enough for me though. Let me pass it over to Goliath, and we can
All right.
Jump right in here.
Yeah, so before we get into our main topic talking about the Black Dragons, want to get a little unrelated quick lore out of the way, just to talk about what the heck a Naru is, because this has been sort of the MacGuffin of the entire year-long story, and now it's like fully formed, and it's coming ahead. If you play the solo content, then like we got the Naru fully assembled. It's not the shards anymore, and figured it's probably a good idea to just give a little explanation as to what's going on with this thing and why the villains want it in the first place. So a Naru is like a cosmic celestial being of pure light. And we're not talking just like, physical light, like it's a big flashlight in the sky. We're talking the light, the magical, holy, life-giving power that is one of the core cosmic forces in the universe of World of Warcraft and Hearthstone.
Okay.
So they sort of, I think we may have briefly touched on the creation story on way back when episode, probably referring to the old gods. But to recap, basically what happens is that, way back before time had a name and all of that stuff, there was the light, and then areas where the light just kind of was lacking, where it was flowed like a river, and places where it kind of didn't flow, the void formed, which was the embodiment of emptiness and devouring hunger, and the two polar opposite forces kind of mixed and clashed and had like a Big Bang type of explosion, and that created the universe essentially. Part of that result of that explosion was that pure shards of the light got thrown out into the physical universe and became the Naru. The thing is that Naru are, in a sense, kind of like stars in that it's possible for them to burn out of their holy energy. When they are burnt out of this, then they have the danger of falling and becoming a void Naru, the exact opposite of what they were before, because the embodiment of emptiness. So what's going on in the story here for our particular year of the Griffin is that there was a Naru that kind of like fell down over Azeroth like a meteor shower and broke into several pieces.
The shards, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then all of the various characters want them for purposes, either because, they're pure mercenaries who want them for the profit, or it'll support their faction, or of course, Kazakus and Prestor have been manipulating the strings like the puppet masters they are, and just arranging for it all to be brought to them so that they can take the Naru, which is, by nature being a pure benevolent light, and turning it into a powerful void weapon, being more of emptiness and evil that they can use to gain power for themselves. So that I figured that would be good to just have a little explanation of what's going on with all of this before we launch into the meat of who the heck these black dragons even are.
Very cool, very cool. I was always surprised when we talk about, Naru and stuff and some of the other the different races like Prophet Valen. We're talking, when I think of like goblins and gnomes and orcs and elves, and then we talk about like space beings and like light crystals and stuff. It's like, whoa, they were talking something completely different here. But
yeah, that's the thing that makes the lore of Azeroth and the surrounding cosmos very unique, because it's something that, like, it both has a serious lore, like a compelling story, but it also doesn't take itself seriously at all. It's very much aware that it's a game first, and will throw in whatever story elements from any genre or historical myth or literature or anything like that it thinks will be cool. So that's how you also have, an entire continent of panda people that fits in right along with goblins, gnomes, typical medieval knights, beings from outer space. Like, yeah, they somehow managed to get it to all fit together. That's what makes this world unique, which also is what in turn makes it really fun.
Love it.
Yeah, and odds are that at some point we'll probably get a bit more Draenei focused Hearthstone set, since they seem to kind of like taking turns giving different races spotlight. Obviously, we had Goblins and Gnomes as one of the first one. We had the Witchwood, which highlighted Worgen a bit more. We've had the Rastikan's Rumble, which was all about the trolls. Stormwind about the human capital city. So, like, I'm not making a bold prediction that this is going to be a next year's thing, but just since they have a tendency to do this right now, I think that it's pretty inevitable that at some point we'll probably get a more Draenei focused one, just because they seem to like doing that.
Yeah.
And so whenever that happens, or if before we do a thing talking about Draenei, we can get a lot more into the Naru. I gave you the very simple explanation here. But
awesome.
Yeah, the Draenei have a strong connection with them.
Very,
as Zarella
very cool.
is evidence of.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'd be super fun at some point to get more into that. And there's just a wealth of lore and fun characters and stuff that we could explore. But tonight we're going to be talking about the Black Dragons. So where do we start here?
Well, we start... the story ultimately begins with the leader of all the Black Dragons. You know him, you love him, maybe. I don't know how often you play his cards. Deathwing, who has one of the records for most incarnations as a legendary card at this point. So let's see, we had his original one. We had the Deathwing Dragonlord from the Old Gods. We have his Aspect of Madness that came out with Rise of Galakrond, and then we had his core set one. So that's 4 different Deathwings that now exist.
Plus a hero portrait?
And hero portrait, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of Deathwings.
So, Deathwing's story, and thus the story of all Black Dragons, actually begins with Galakrond. Actually, the story of all of the dragon aspects begins with Galakrond, because how the dragon flights and dragon aspects came to be in the first place was they were initially a small primitive being of like somewhat sentient creatures called protodrakes who had actually kind of evolved from elementals that had found their way into the material plane and sort of became half elemental, half stony flesh type of beings through like weird magical evolution. So they were kind of like semi-intelligent animals that kind of, talk in broken talk because they not necessarily smartest or most cultured. No, like there's literally the a books that are written about this, like Dawn of the Aspects or something like that, I think, and that's the way that they talk at times. So what happened was that Galakrod was this big proto-drake that ended up somehow gaining necromantic magic because he was just really hungry and kept on eating everything, including corpses, and somehow constantly consuming corpses gave him the ability to raise corpses and mutated him. And don't ask me how all of that works because they didn't go into very much detail explaining it. I'm sure they will at some point because they love to retcon how things happened lots of the time. But essentially, he became this huge apex predator that was a threat to all living things. And so there were 5 of these proto-drakes that banded together under the guidance and leadership of a Titan Forge named Tyr. They're sort of like guardians of the created world by the Titans who helped seed life on Azeroth. And so basically they managed to take down Galakrond, and that's why, he's dead, and why they're trying to raise him in the League of Evil in that set. But as a reward for being so brave and helping to defend Azeroth from such a great evil, the Titans blessed these 5 proto-drakes with powerful magics and made them guardians of the world. And that they were each given different abilities. So you have Alex Straza, the Lifebinder, who was the leader of the Red Dragonflight and was given some powers over life and death as a guardian of life. You had Malagos of the Blue Dragonflight, who was given stewardship over the arcane magic of Azeroth and making sure it was never misused. You have Nazdormu, the Bronze Dragonflight, who is the guardian of the true timeline and making sure that no one meddles with history. You have Ysera, who is the aspect of the Green Dragonflight, who has a strong connection to Druidism and the Emerald Dream and the flow of nature. And then Neltharion, who was given the stewardship of the earth, of the power of the world itself, and a guardian of it. And that's Deathwing's original name, Neltharion. Not to be confused with Nefarian. They sound very similar. This has an L in it. Neltharion was his original name. And he was actually very loyal, very wise and respected, and a true guardian of the world. Little problem is that because he had such a strong magical connection to the earth, the ground of Azeroth itself, that was also where the old gods had been imprisoned. And so they had like a direct pipeline to him, and over the centuries, they drove him mad, corrupting him and his entire flight. Because the way a dragonflight works is you have the aspect who is in charge of it, and then you have their few different consorts who mate with them, and then basically every other person or dragon in a dragonflight is either the consort or the child of the original aspect. And so it affected him, the corruption, and all of the other black dragons. They became incredibly corrupt. I'd like to read a little description from you describing their culture from an old WoW post. It said that, let's see. These creatures are immensely powerful and cruel and revel in mortal suffering. The black dragons are the enemies of every other dragonflight, especially the red dragons, because the red dragons are about supporting and sustaining all of mortal life. So yeah, what ultimately happened, because all of the other dragons didn't know that the black dragons were slowly turning evil, was that when the War of the Ancients came along, the first time that the demons of the Burning Legion tried to invade Azeroth, a Nefarian tricked all of the other dragons into creating a weapon that you guys know is a Hearthstone card from Cobalts and Catacombs, the Dragon Soul. It was his idea, and he got them to each pour some of their own power, their own essence into it as a way of fighting against the demons. And they all respected him. He hadn't done anything to indicate that he was going mad. So they yeah, that's a great idea. You're wise. I'm sure that this is all part of, a plan that'll work out for everyone in the long run. And he did use it against the demons. And then he turned it right back on all the other dragons because he was ultimately crazy and devastated several of their numbers. The blue dragonflight in particular was taken out by quite a bit. And Malagos had been best buds with Nefarian, so this betrayal really cut him deep in particular.
And then somehow Anduin ends up with Dragon Soul?
No, it has nothing to do with Anduin. They decided to throw it into the priest class for no real discernible reason, honestly. I'll explain in a little bit why it would have made more sense as a warlock weapon. I
have two quick questions if I can.
Go ahead.
Okay, so number one, when or how does the name change come about? I mean, I'm joking here in chat that Naltharion isn't metal enough. You call me Deathwing instead. But how does this this shift? That's question number one. And then again, I don't know where this fits in, but all of the pictures that I see, one of the most distinguishing features of Deathwing is this metal jaw. That it looks like it's metal and hinged on and this big giant thing, and so I assume that that wasn't always there. I imagine at some point when he kind of turned evil that this was an add-on. But is there something to those that don't involve a 2-hour story?
Oh, absolutely. No, actually, that fits right into where this exact part of the story is the right time to ask those questions, because Deathwing is just what they all started calling him after he betrayed them. So it's he didn't even necessarily choose that name for himself, as far as I'm aware. It was just how it was their name of condemnation, that you were once a guardian, but now all you bring is death. And as far as the metal stuff, that's because the power of the old gods had filled him so completely that it was actually tearing his body apart. And so all of that metal is literally really strong. I can't remember what particular fantasy metal name it has at the moment. It's literally bolted onto him to hold his body together to keep it from tearing itself apart from ultimate power, for Darth Sidious type of things.
Okay.
But it's rather similar in the way to in Revenge of the Sith, where Sidious's Force Lightning gets reflect back at him and he becomes deformed and gets his Emperor look. It's kind of like that with Deathwing. The whole evil power deforms your body.
Gotcha.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. All right. Well, very cool. All right, and so Deathwing is the aspect or the leader of these black dragons, and so you're mentioning there's kind of a consort and then different children, and so we're gonna kind of hit on some of those, and it looks like a few of those are Hearthstone cards and mercenaries, and then there's a couple other things that are not in Hearthstone quite yet, but I guess we'll see. So it looks like next up is Sinestra, if I'm pronouncing that right.
That is correct, yes. So Sinestra was the prime consort of Deathwing. So she is the mother of I think pretty much all, definitely the mother of Onyxia and Nefarian, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Not the mother of all black dragons, because, you know, he had a few consorts, but she was the main one. She was sort of like, as far as black dragons would have a queen, or Deathwing had a main wife or something, that would be her. Actually, shortly after his body erupted, he attempted to mate with his consorts, and it really hurt them because he has like searing lava coming out, and so Sinestra has like everlasting burning scars that have tormented her for her entire life because of that.
Lava and metal for parts of your body.
Yeah, not the greatest when attempting to procreate.
Give me a big hug!
That's better or worse than a leper gnome, honestly. They're gross. But yeah, no, so basically, she actually is responsible for kind of going a little mad scientist, and she's not the only dragon. We're going to touch on another one who went even more so this way. But an interesting thing that happened was that Deathwing actually once took a trip to Outland. You know, from Ashes of Outland, you got Illidan and the Draenei, and just like so many things going on there. Deathwing actually spent a little time there because it got to the point where there weren't very many black dragons left. Most of his consorts were dead. Most of the black dragons were dead, either from the War of the Ancients or being hunted down by all the vengeful dragon aspects, and the other flights are like, yeah, no, this is not good. We got to get rid of these guys because, you know, they're evil. And so they had a little problem trying to figure out how to regrow the full power of the Black Dragonflight. One of Deathwing's plans was during the Second War between the Horde and Alliance. This was before Outland got shattered into Outland. It was still Draenor at the time, the homeworld of the orcs. There was some pre-existing relationships that Deathwing had with the Horde, actually, because as an agent of the Old Gods, he appreciated the chaos and strife that they were causing. He actually got the Dragonmaw clan of orcs to use the Dragon Soul, because it had been enchanted so that he couldn't use it, so he couldn't do this himself. But he got the Dragonmaw clan to enslave Alexstrasza and force the Red Dragons to serve the Horde for a while against the Alliance. And actually, that's why I think that the Dragon Soul would have been appropriate as a warlock weapon, because it was used by a Dragonmaw orc warlock named like Nezro's Skullbreaker or something, if I remember correctly. And he infused it with fel magics, and it became known as the Demon Soul before it was eventually destroyed using one of Deathwing's scales, which is the only thing powerful enough to destroy it or something, I think. But at any rate, so Deathwing and the Horde had, you know, some pre-existing negotiations. He agreed that he would help them find some special artifacts that would allow them to make portals to other worlds if they would allow him to bring his flight's dragon eggs into Outland so he could hide them from all the other dragon aspects. Because that's the thing, he has to keep all this hush-hush, otherwise they'll hunt down and destroy everything. He's powerful, but it's still 1 against 4 there. And so he brought several of the dragon eggs in, and this is actually where Gruul, the Dragon Slayer, comes into play, because he was not the greatest fan of the Black Dragons muscling on his turf. And so a bunch of Alliance adventurers who had pursued the Horde over across the Dark Portal into Draenor, allied with him, that he helped to destroy many of the eggs and many of the Black Dragons who had come in, and that really ticked Deathwing off. But Gruul was able to hold his own pretty well. But when there was the whole portal eruption business that we talked about back when we covered Outland that ended up shattering the world, Deathwing saw it was happening, and he noped the heck out of there. He just like, nope, I'll abandon all of the other black dragons here. It's every dragon for himself, and he managed to get through the portal before it was all destroyed and shattered into Outland. But that was an interesting. Those eggs that were left were exposed to the energies of the twisting nether in Outland and became an entire new dragonflight called the Netherwing Flight. Actually, that dragon that's in the Demon Hunter, that's where he comes from. So how's this all tie back into Sinestra? Well, she wanted to get a hold of some of these eggs. She did some experiments where she tried to merge the energies of a Twilight Dragon, who, by the way, is the Warlock Dragon card from Descent of Dragons. Let's see if I need to recheck his name there. Because let's face it, some of these are difficult to pronounce and not the easiest to remember. Let's see. Yes, it's Zezerku. Zezeraku.
Zezerku.
I guess that's how you pronounce it. I've never had a word that had two Z's in a row before.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that's another card that comes into play. And so she tried to merge his energies from the twisting nether, the nether flight dragons, with the stolen eggs of other dragonflights in order to create a new type of dragon that could help to supplement the fact that they were having trouble making more black dragons, because like most of the the dragons that could mate with each other are gone. So they were actually successful in that, creating what's known as the Twilight Dragons. And we have a decent amount of cards with those in it as well, given at least all the way back to the beginning with Twilight Drake. You know, you play it and it gains the health equal to the amount of cards in your hand. So she is pretty much solely responsible for creating all of those cards that have Twilight Dragon or Twilight Drake in them.
Yeah, there's Twilight Guardian. There's a whole bunch of them. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now, eventually, she was taken down, as pretty much all of these dragons are. If you are a massive evil force on Azeroth, then it's inevitable you'll be turned into a dungeon or raid boss, and your chances are pretty slim. Maybe there'll be a story exception for you that you'll canonically survive, but odds are that if you're a raid boss, that's the end of the line, because you can't stand against the player characters. And so, yeah, that is essentially Sinestra's story. She eventually kind of got, reanimated by the Twilight's Hammer cultist during the Cataclysm, because they were all in the revitalizing the Twilight Dragon project to set help for themselves. But she didn't really. She's just a tool at that point, more than a character. That's kind of where her story ends. And now we can move on to the a pair of naughty siblings, let's say. First, we've got Nefarian, who is his dad's name without an L.
Right.
And
I'm sorry. Before you get too far, can I ask you one question? Because we see it here in the artwork for these, and I know there's some lore here. When we talk about the aspects, and I assume it's just a magic thing, but like they're dragons, but then they have this like human appearance, and then one of the cards that we talk about later is a dragon with a different kind of appearance, and so I assume the idea is that because they're powerful and they've got magic, then they can shape change and they take the form that they want. But like I'm sitting here looking at Victor Nefarius and Lady Prestor and Deathwing, and they've got these human looking forms, but how does that work?
Yes, that's exactly the case, that they are they have powerful magic, and they can take on pretty much any sort of humanoid guise they want, any of the mortal races of Azeroth, and they have various reasons. Now, for most of the Dragonflights, it is for the purpose of either being able to kind of secretly work among the mortals for, good purposes, maybe observing them, or kind of a bit of reconnaissance type of thing, just seeing how are they behaving themselves. Others are very much, they fully reveal their dragon identities, but they do it to make interacting and integrating into mortal societies a lot easier because you're going to feel more free to act with another human or an elf or something than with a massive dragon that you have to crane your neck to look up at. Actually, one of my favorites, Chromie, is a bronze dragon who takes on the form of this adorable gnome with a real bubbly personality, and she is just the cutest and the best, and I love her. But I used to forget sometimes that she's a full-on dragon. She just doesn't reveal that form very often because she likes interacting with people as a gnome.
They probably also couldn't fit into the tavern, to come in to the inn.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Like I said, just integrating with society in that way.
Well, and we've talked about it in the past, and I imagine we may hit on it a little bit tonight. But when we talk about Onyxia and Lady Prestor, like part of her mission was to infiltrate and
right.
And how can you do that in the form of a giant dragon where you can in the guise of a human? So
exactly. So for the black dragons, they had far more. Well, I want to say nefarious, but that sounds very redundant. But he literally chose the name of Lord Victor Nefarius. Like, okay, but they were nefarious reasons. For
we
the
see
purposes
them. They do this all
with human politics.
Yeah, we see them do this all the time, though, where they take the names so literally. Where I remember in the past talking about the Black Hands, and it's Rend and Tear or whatever it is, or Rend and Maim,
the brothers. Yeah.
And so when I have somebody named Nefarian, it's like Nefarious. That makes sense. And
yeah. That they must have taken their inspiration from Sith names when you have all sorts of characters. Like, the name Darth Vader is literally based on the name Stark and Vader. You got, if you go deeper into Star Wars lore, you got Sith who are literally named things like Darth Ravage, Darth Ruin. It was like, wow, going real subtle here, guys. Darth Sidious, the Emperor, is literally insidious. It's like, Maul. He mauls people.
So here we have Darth Nefarious.
These would fit in very well as Sith, honestly, if we were to make crossover fan fiction between WoW and Star Wars. And I wouldn't be surprised if someone somewhere has already done that. But at any rate, yes, so while Deathwing was off on his little outland excursion with his rather not turned out as planned attempt to repopulate the dragons and Outlands, he left his two children, Nefarian and Onyxia, to kind of hold down the fort in Azeroth and see what they could do on their end to help strengthen the forces. Nefarian allied with some remnants of the Horde, which, since you brought up Rend Blackhand, there's a reason that he is in the Blackrock Mountain set and has that effect where if you're holding a dragon, you destroy a legendary minion, which is something that I thought was really OP when I first started playing, but I've never seen used at all. But at any rate, so yeah, you got some members of the Horde, some orcs that considered themselves the true Horde and everything, who were in Blackrock Spire and worked with the Black Dragons. And Nefarian's whole thing was he was even more mad scientist than his mother was regarding the Twilight Dragons, because he wanted to attempt to create a new super dragon called the Chromatic Dragonflight that would include all of the strengths from every other type of dragon. And most of his experience were abysmal failures. They would die way too quickly. They were unstable, maybe rapidly aging or just falling apart. And very few of things that he created were the effective dragon, powerful ultimate soldiers he wanted. Doesn't mean they didn't end up being dangerous, zombie-like mutants that could still be a great threat for people who might go on a raid in that area, but they weren't quite what he was going for. But while he was busy with all of that stuff, he also, took on this mortal guise. And Deathwing had done the same. Deathwing had much earlier taken on the guise of noble named Lord Davis Prestor, who, we mentioned this a little bit back in the Stormwind episode, who played a role in helping to make sure that Stormwind didn't receive aid from other human kingdoms
Oh yeah, that's
back when
right.
it was being invaded by the Horde. It's like, those are just peasant rebellions, I know, but they're just blowing it all out of proportion. He was very good at playing human politics. And yeah, he did a lot of manipulation there. But so his daughter, Onyxia, decided to just kind of take on the Prestor name regarding her human guise, because no one had found out that he was Deathwing. In fact, here's a fun fact. He was actually, as a human, working to arrange to marry the sister of Arthas Menethil, who would later become the Lich King. But
Whoa.
then Lord Prestor just kind of disappeared, which was because Deathwing got called elsewhere with Black Dragon stuff, and so it was just, oh, guess this marriage isn't happening after all. But no, that was almost the thing. And that's their thing. They really like taking on these human guises. Nefarian's ultimate attempt at a creation was a chromatic dragon that was actually so powerful, and this happened in a book called Twilight of the Aspects, that it was brought to life like with a full-on magical lightning beam, like in a Frankenstein movie or something, by the Twilight cultists. And it's so powerful that it has like it looks like a Hydra, honestly. Where it has like a head of each of the chromatic flights called like Chromulus, and it's so powerful that it can't actually be killed, just like put into sleep and locked in a stasis. So it actually has the potential to come back as a future boss if bad guys were to attempt to break it out and reawaken it or something. So it's there's at least one of Nefarian's experiments that could end up being a lasting threat that far outlives him because yeah, like I said, once you become a raid boss, you're essentially toast, and that's what happened to him when Blackrock Spire ended up becoming a raid, which is part of what's reflected in the Blackrock Mountain Hearthstone adventure.
Very cool. Okay, so moving on then, the next up is Onyxia. And I know we had hit on some of this before, but I think it would be good to cover, a little bit of it.
We're gonna go a bit more into why she was doing everything that she did in the first place. So, as I said, Blackrock Mountain was the headquarters for the secret lair of the Black Dragons, and believe it or not, they actually considered humans to be a significant threat. Partially because Stormwind was located relatively close to Blackrock Mountain, and if the armies of the Alliance, or even apparently just of Stormwind, were to discover that the Black Dragons were there, well, that would pose a significant threat to the few Black Dragons that are there, and all the vulnerable eggs and whelps and unstable science experiments, and really, they were in a lot more delicate and fragile situation than you might think. And their fears were appropriately founded given that it can take just one party of 20 to 40 players to down one of these powerful dragons. So a full army, yeah, that makes sense. So Prestor, or Onyxia, her whole goal was to play the subtle infiltration game and distract and keep away all of the forces of Stormwind from discovering what her brother was doing in Blackrock Mountain. She deliberately would make sure that forces weren't sent anywhere near there, creating problems in other areas in order to distract and get the armies to go here and there and everywhere except Blackrock Mountain. But her ultimate goal was to become the leader, the ruler of Stormwind and be able to control everything directly. It was to that end that she did her whole trick of literally splitting King Varian into two people, with her initial goal being to kill off his strong-willed side and to use his weak-willed side as a puppet that would eventually be disposed of once there'd been the legitimate transfer of power in some fashion or whatnot. Don't know if she wanted to just get him to officially appoint her as something and retire, or maybe she would like seduce him, become the queen, and dispose of him and rule that way. That aspect of the plan isn't really delved into, but it was a major step that she was going to assume direct control over the human kingdoms and be able to make sure that they were kept away and busy and happy and ignorant while the threat of the black dragons would grow that would eventually wipe them all out. But that didn't quite go according to her plan, as we already know from talking about Stormwind. Varian's strong-willed side survived, ended up befriending people like Valera, and went through a series of adventures where they ended up discovering who he really was and reclaiming his true identity as the king. And here's where there's a little interesting discrepancy between the story and the game. Because story-wise, King Varian is the one who ultimately went and killed Onyxia, because after there was a confrontation in the throne room after they had uncovered her true identity, then she, just fully revealed, yes, I am a black dragon, and turned out and all of the guards around were actually little dragon minions in disguise as well, which is where her card ability comes from. That is suddenly because she says, reveal your true forms. She's telling all the cards in your deck, you were dragons the whole time, now show everybody.
Cool.
Well, and that makes sense why her portrait, you see in the back the shadow kind of wings where, maybe she's revealing herself as well.
Right.
How clever. I love it. All right, I love it. That's great.
So that's the story aspect, and she kidnapped Anduin and took her to Onyxia's lair, and then the two Varians ended up going to rescue Anduin and ended up fusing back together and all of that stuff that we talked about beforehand. But that's not the way it works out in the game. In the game, this was, as I said, the first raid in World of Warcraft, which is why, it's being represented as, raiding and how we predicted everything would go here. But this was something that the players did. And so there was a little bone of contention that some of the people were like, hey, you can't say Varian did all that. I put in all the work. I'm the one who uncovered that Onyxia's true identity. Me and my raiding party went into Onyxia's lair and killed her. So that's it's kind of like the one instance where there's a difference between the official story and the game. In almost every other instance, that we just say and a band of adventurers ended up slaying this character and that character, and wow, everybody ends up being killed by a band of adventurers. But this is the one instance where that isn't the official story case. And we'll talk a bit more about the rating aspect when we get into some Easter egg cards at the end. But Onyxia was slain. And there were maybe one or two times where there was an attempt to revive her, but those were quickly shut down. More Twilight, cultist, old god, black dragon, madness experiments that go about as well as when you're trying to get something for a science fair on a tight crunch schedule, I suppose.
Or Chef Nomi starting grease fires by accident.
Yeah, about the same level of success, really.
Well, and one thing I see here, not to divert us too much, but when I was doing the research, once Onyxia is dead, it looks like they hung her her head at the gates of Stormwind, and so
Yes.
Savage. Before you showed that it was a dragon's head, I was picturing her human form head.
No, this makes a far better trophy. I know that
Yeah.
actually that's literally a part of the quest. After players kill her, then you loot her head and you take it back, and it's mounted up as a warning for those who would dare to attempt to do basically all the horrible stuff that she did. Remember, she was also single-handedly responsible for funding and arranging the Defias Brotherhood, and also for killing Varian's wife, Queen Tiffin, by arranging the mob that threw her, because Varian was so strong-willed and his love for his family was so powerful that made him really difficult to control. So that's why her first thing before she even did the splitting him in two was to get rid of the influential people around him. So arranged for his loving wife to be killed and tried to, get rid of Anduin as well. So that's, can you blame them for wanting to hoist her head on a spike? No, it's too big for a spike, so they went with heavy chains.
hey, there we go. Okay, so there's another sibling here that we saw way back when in Hearthstone.
Gadget Stand, to be precise.
Yeah, it's seen very little play over the years, but it is now a new mercenary card as well. And so here is the next one. We have Wrathion. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Wrathion.
Yeah. So when I was researching this, and I'm sure you know the story, but I could not find any real pictures of Wrathion in dragon form. It's all human form, and so and I imagine that has something to do with the story. And but anyways, tell us about Wrathion.
Wrathion is a very rare exception. He is an uncorrupted black dragon. Because there's a whole quest that players go on at one point back in the Cataclysm, where they are working with a red dragon who, hilariously enough, has taken on the humanoid form of a goblin, of all creatures.
How funny.
And does a thing where you retrieve a black dragon egg, and the Red Dragonflight does some experiments on it to try to purify the corruption and remove the old god influence that drives them mad from the start. And they're successful in that. Wrathion, while he appears as, a grown adult human, he is a whelp. He is a baby dragon. But because dragons have such high intelligence, even as a technically baby dragon, he is still, fully capable of, lots of wise things. Now, granted, he is quite immature for quite a bit. Like, he practically throws tantrums and everything. But he has taken it on himself to rid the corruption of the Black Dragonflight. He actually ended up working with a group of rogue assassins for a while and put out hits and bounties on black dragons, and was determined to kill Deathwing, even though it was his own father and everything, because he's like, look, we were initially supposed to be Azeroth's guardians, and look what's become of us. He wants to restore the original noble purpose of the Black Dragonflight. He and Anduin actually ended up becoming really close friends for a while. This was during the Mists of Pandaria scene, and but he messed up quite a bit because, like I said, he's still a kid. Really,
a whelp. That's so
immature.
funny.
That's why he doesn't show himself. He doesn't want to be the wee whelp.
You know what, though? That makes sense, because I'm sitting here looking for pictures of the dragon form, and I finally found one, and it's like this little tiny baby dragon, and I was
that's him.
And I was like, that can't be right. That's hilarious. I'll put it up on the screen in a minute. Well, you can keep talking, but that's so funny because
I wanted to ask a question about the art with Wrathion here. I've noticed in his human form here, we can see him with fire, and that makes sense. Dragons and fire, but we also have this red energy that he seems to have coming from his eyes that he can conjure. This what exactly is that red energy?
Well, are you referring to the initial Hearthstone card? I presume not
Yeah,
the mercenary one.
yeah, the Hearthstone.
I believe that is more of a set flavor thing. I think it's referencing because he is a dragon in disguise, Black Dragon in disguise. It's been revealed that Kazakus is also a black dragon in disguise, clearly, an evil corrupted one and everything, as most of them are. I believe the implicit story here is that Wrathion, within his own guise, remember he says when you play, I must remain hidden to remain free. It's like he doesn't want them to know his true identity. But Kazakus' whole thing is, within the Gadgetzan stories, he has this powerful, unstable red mana that creates these effects. So I think this is kind of depicting Wrathion investigating what Kazakus is up to with the red mana, not so much something that is inherent to his character. It's more the implicit Hearthstone art storytelling for the story of this particular set. Okay, but that is a good question.
Yeah, because I noticed that, Kazakus has that as well in Kazakus' art, too. So I was just wondering if there was
Yeah, that's a Hearthstone original aspect there.
Cool.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. Okay. So here it is. This is. I saw this for those of you listening to the audio, but like I saw this when I was looking for the pictures to post up here, and it looks like one of these, all the other whelps do, and it's like like the little cards that like Leroy Jenkins poops out, right? And I like that can't be right. That can't be right. That's so funny. He's this little whelp. I can imagine, Onyxia and Deathwing and all these transform into these massive dragon is scary and all this, and he transformed, and he's this little tiny little dragon.
Yes. But he still thinks quite highly of himself, honestly. He got to the point of arrogance where he saw a vision of the Burning Legion invading Azeroth again, and since he wanted to try to manipulate the war between the Horde and Alliance so that one faction would come out on top, and so that there would be he wanted to have some sort of new world order among the mortal races so that they would not be fighting amongst themselves when the Burning Legion eventually came. That didn't quite work out the way that he had hoped, where there was still the Horde existed and the Alliance existed in sort of a very uneasy peace. So what he did, which was not a good idea in the long, but he decided to partner with a renegade bronze dragon to free Garrosh from prison after he had committed numerous war crimes, take him back in time to the old orc world of Draenor, and create a new Iron Horde from orcs of the past that would conquer Azeroth, and then everyone would be united to fight the Legion. You see, he has some flawed thinking here. That's where we get this confusing bunch of time travel stuff that got added to the lore and parallel universes and stuff in an expansion called Warlords of Draenor, which we're not going into because that would take forever and get a headache. But the way that it ends is that, ironically, it brings in an alternate universe Ghoul-Dad who actually starts that very Legion invasion that Wrathion was trying to prevent, and he unintentionally fulfilled his own prophecy. Thankfully, he matured after a few years, actually did some studying, actually did some reflecting, and actually the full art image that we have him here, it's not in the cards, is where he's a little bit older, where you see a bit of his younger, humanoid version where he doesn't have the sexy beard and long hair and everything. Yeah, I mean, this guy had a big glow up, I'm just saying. And actually, that's what he... during this stage, this was in the Battle for Azeroth expansion, where he goes to Anduin and shares a way that they can help to find and fight the Old God N'Zoth. This is something we'll go in more detail when we continue our Old God series. because right now we still have 3 to go on that point. But yeah, so he had a big role to play there, and he's actually he's grown up as a dragon too. He's a drake in his dragon form there. So there are pictures if you know where to look where he is. In fact, even a little cinematic from a raid cutscene, I believe, where he briefly is flying around as a dragon before turning back into his humanoid form. And like he's still not full-grown dragon, but he's like teenage dragon at this point. So he's a bit more the big impressive Drake, but he has a long ways to go still. And there might be more with him in the future, because he's right now searching for a lost location known as the Dragon Isles, which could hold secrets regarding the history of the dragons and maybe some powerful magic and who knows what, that he's trying to continue his mission of being able to reinstate a proper earth-warding, world-protecting Black Dragonflight. So that's something that is currently his work in progress as far as the lore is concerned at the moment.
Gotcha.
Now, there is one other uncorrupted Black Dragon, who is the last one that we're going to be talking about right now. And I get a big kick out of this guy because unlike many of the others who take on very human-looking type of races, a gnome, an elf, a human, this guy, who I'm going to try to remember how to pronounce.
What is it? Abyssian or something like that?
Abyssian, something like that. I think it's a play on the word ebony because he's a black dragon. I know that, but he takes on the guise of a Tauren, specifically a member of the High Mountain Tauren who live in a special area called High Mountain, and were blessed by Cenarius back during the War of Ancients with a special gift, which is why they have the moose antlers. That's a whole Cenarius did a little cosmetic tinkering with them there to show his appreciation for the founder of the High Mountain tribe named Holn High Mountain. Holn High Mountain was a great leader, a great fighter, a great hunter during the War of the Ancients, a close ally of Malfurion and Illidan and Tyrande while they were fighting all the demons. And he also had some run-ins with Deathwing, because as I mentioned, Deathwing had a whole thing going on with the War of the Ancients as well. That's when he revealed his true nature and turned on them with the Dragon Soul. So what Holn High Mountain managed to do was that he got a hold of this special Titan artifact called the Hammer of Karsgaroth, and he managed to find where some black dragon eggs were inside Neltharion's lair. And most of them ended up getting destroyed, but through the power of the hammer, he managed to remove the corruption from one of the eggs, and that is where our good buddy Abyssian comes from, who vowed to, because, dragons live for really, really long time, if not outright immortal, then he took on the guise of an old spirit walker, kind of like a shaman, a spirit guide, named Ebonhorn, who would be the guide of all of the leaders of the generations of the High Mountains in order to share with them their heritage, because he is extremely grateful to Holn High Mountain for purifying him and saving him from that life of corruption and madness. And so eventually he did, I think he's probably met up with Wrathion a couple of times at least. Very few people know his true identity as a black dragon. He keeps that very, very low cover, but I really like him. He largely because he's a lore master type of guy himself. He's like the keeper of the tribe's traditions and history and all of that, and so I feel a spiritual connection with this character. But yeah, I think he's not one who currently has a Hearthstone card, but it would be really cool to see him as one at some point, I think.
Well, there's some potential, and depending on where they go with the story, like it sounds like there's room to grow, and like Wrathion is a great example of that, where maybe there's some potential for the future. And I know they're always working way ahead. One of the things that the devs mentioned on Twitter over the past week or so was some insight into this mini set, and that there were some board-based strategies, and that the idea behind the cards in this set was to that maybe they don't look powerful now, but that we are building these with future sets in mind. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't the last that we've seen of some of these characters, and maybe we'll be seeing some new characters soon. So
yeah, it would be great. I'd be happy, since that they're obviously like doing reprints of other characters in different versions, even sometimes just making silly versions of them, like Jungle Hunter Hemet, back in Ongoro.
Right.
Didn't really need to do that. Just like, okay, sure, why not? But like, I wouldn't object to a new Wrathion card that if they decide to lean into the dragon stuff a bit more to kind of tie everything together.
Well, and because we saw Wrathion recently in Mercs, that like it makes me think that, oh, hey, maybe there's potential here. And if the character is
Sinestra too, then
it would be nice, because Wrathion didn't really see very much play.
Yeah,
like none. So it'd be interesting, and when you see a card that's represented in Mercs but not in Hearthstone proper, it's always a little bit weird. And even here in this story, it seems like this character is still young, still growing, still evolving, and so maybe there's potential for some more down the line. And again, who knows? Who knows what they'll do? But I love dragons in general, and the idea of hey, let's see some more would be really cool. Hey, one thing that maybe I should mention super quick, just as a side note, is when we talk about the idea of the lore and the aspects and how they can shift forms between, their dragon form and whatever sort of shape that they want to assume, whether it's human or tauren or gnome or whatever it is. We see that sort of reflected in the Hearthstone cards as well. So like Wrathion right here is a good example, right? There's no dragon tag on this card, or Lady Prestor, right? It doesn't say dragon on it.
Right.
But when it's in dragon form, it does. And so that's interesting. I like that. I think that's...
I love how literally Rathion's flavor text says, why isn't he labeled as a dragon? Shh, what are you trying to do? Give away his identity? That's literally the flavor text of the Wrathion card. It's like, yeah, I appreciate they just owned that. I'm sure it was initially for mechanical purposes, and then for some, it's either because they were keeping a secret that the character is dragon, or retroactively decided to make them a dragon, like with Reno.
Specifically here, look at like the Merc card in terms of tribe. Wrathion says human on it. And
that's a good point.
I feel like it's probably intentional, and I think that they're usually pretty clever when they explore these little things. And maybe, speaking of clever, maybe this is a good segue for our kind of remaining cards here, where there's some fun backstory, little Easter eggs. And so while these are not major characters, this is where the fun starts. And so just gonna remove Wrathion here and put up our first little bit. When we're talking about loot in the spirit of dungeon raid or boss raid, this is pretty fun. There's a couple new cards and a couple old cards here, but so I've got raid leader, raid negotiator, gear grubber, and loot hoarder. Loot hoarder being probably one of the most misheard or misunderstood voice lines in the game.
Yeah.
Okay, so I understood what he was saying right away. What did you hear it as? Or is it something that's dirty and you can't say?
No, well, what it sounds like is mind if I roll weed, WEED. Like that's what it sounds like, right? Mind if and
that's hilarious.
Mind if I roll weed, and then as somebody who has not played almost any Warcraft, like the idea, if I'm trying to think of, well, this is a family game, why are they saying that? I would never, the sentence does not make sense in my brain. Mind if I roll need? What does that mean? But when you start talking about
Need agreed.
right, well, but when you start playing, you're doing these dungeon raids and there's loot drops. Like, I mean, Goliath, you could explain it better than me, but like the first time I heard this, I was like, excuse me, what?
Yeah. So essentially, like I said, this one of the fun things about this set is that it's not only touched on this part of the lore a little bit here, and it's just great to have more dragons back in, because we've been going without some new dragon cards overall for quite a while. It's been some pretty low drops. But there's so many fun references to either the way that raids work in the game, because this isn't just, an Onyxia set. This is an homage to the raiding, because Onyxia's Lair was almost always the very first raid that people who played at the beginning of the game ever had. It was just a single boss raid. There wasn't a whole bunch of others. We were just fighting Onyxia, but it was their first exposure. And as I said before, while we were predicting, this is the way that the story has gone throughout the year of Hearthstone, the Year of the Griffin, as we mirror that player experience back from the earliest days of Warcraft. You have your starting zones, your capital cities, your first dungeons like Dead Mines and Wailing Caverns. You have where you level up enough to get some PvP in Alterac Valley. And now you get to the real in-game material of your very first raid with Onyxia's Lair. And so they put in a lot of references to things that have become cultural internet memes, because enough years have passed by, especially since it was in the older days of the internet, where when something went viral, it went viral because there wasn't as much competition,
Well, Leroy Jenkins is like the classic example, right?
Exactly. There was a little confusion about this a bit earlier. I saw Leroy Jenkins. His card summons whelps, but he is not a part of Onyxia's Lair. He is part of Upper Blackrock Spire. That is the one where you fight Nefarian, her brother. So that's what they were doing in that video. But this is Onyxia's Lair right here, and Leroy Jenkins has nothing to do with this. However, there's another thing that became a bit of a meme, where there was a viral video that went out many years ago that was essentially someone did some animations over the recording of a person who was a raid leader, is in charge of organizing the raid, getting like 40 people together. Raids were even bigger than they are today way back then. They were way harder too. It was real hardcore game stuff back then. They made it easier for more casual people like me over the years. But this guy is just like freaking out on a lot of his people who are making mistakes, and this is where we get a lot of memes, like things that our raid leader card says, where he says like "handle it" and "hit it very hard." Because the things is, it says, many whelps, handle it, because Onyxia, one of her mechanics is that she summons a bunch of whelps, which is where we get the mechanics with all the whelp-related things with her legendary card in her version in this set.
Very cool.
And we got the raid negotiator, because a lot of the time you got people who have tense relations here, because this is a very high-strung situation, especially when there's a limited amount of loot. And everybody wants it. So you got the negotiator here. You got the loot hoarder, who's the one who just tries to take all of that loot and will roll need on things even if he doesn't actually need them.
I hate that person. I'm going to say right now, I hate that person. I played a lot back then, and I played Classic, and there were times where you have a very low chance of the weapon or armor dropping that you need, and somebody else who's higher level than you or might even have it already or whatever rolls need, and like you thanks. Like, thank you.
You are why would you a greater expert on this aspect than I am then if you actually played through this stuff, because I didn't play through this aspect.
It drove me crazy where you run the same instance or raid over and over again, and you're looking for that one exact drop. And especially if you're going in with a group that you don't really know the people, and they all roll, they get it. They're higher level than you, and they're just gonna give it to a buddy or whatever. And you're sitting there going, I've been running this over and over and over again, and you're gonna take what I actually need. And, like it's extremely frustrating. So.
Yep, well, that's why they gave him an annoying voice
Screw
and have
you,
him sneaking off and everything. And then the gear grubber is something rather similar, who's just like grabbing up all of the gear that they can. They're representing a very similar type of player there, who is ironically like almost none of these. Either the negotiator is probably the only one that you want on your raid team. All the others, the greedy people and the raid leader who completely freaks out at you when you make a little goof up, then none of those are ones that you actually really want in a raid.
Well,
but it's real fun to see them referenced here.
If anybody watches, like, and I know this isn't like you were saying Blackrock, but if anyone watches the original Leroy Jenkins video, you watch the whole thing, and this raid negotiator card really reminds me of it, because they're sitting here in a group like outside, like ready to rush in, and they're talking about, all right, who's gonna do what? You go do this and you do that, and then you hear like, time's up, let's do this. And then he screams like, Leroy Jenkins. I'm doing it terribly, but like, and then you hear the aftermath, like, oh my God, Leroy, wait, come back. Oh, stop. And like, I can just picture the person doing this face here, like oh my
yes.
like,
yeah.
And so if anyone hasn't watched it, like, go on YouTube and look at the original Leroy Jenkins video. It's so funny, but you see the whole thing go down, and it was pretty great.
Yeah.
So we got a couple others here, though. And so the next one up I have is Boomkin and Hit It Very Hard.
Right. Now, Hit It Very Hard is one of those cases where it's from that same video where it's one of those things the raid leader said, it's become a meme, and they went so far as to turn that into a Hearthstone card. I recall a tweet, I believe it was Cora who posted it, said that she wanted to be able to name one of the Warlock cards More Dots.
That would have been amazing.
Because that's another thing from there, but that was deemed to be too meta. I personally agree, because dot stands for damage over time, and which means like you cast something you cast it and then it's going to like sort of a bleeding or a poison effect or something like that. And so that's sort of what that card would do, but I agree that's a bit too meta. But Hit It Very Hard, that's funny enough. That fits Hearthstone flavor pretty well.
Well, that's the voice line. That's the voice line that the raid leader says too. When you play it, it says "Hit it very hard."
In my place of work, when this video came out and the More Dots thing was happening, there was this candy you could buy that was called Dots.
Yes,
and
I've had those.
Yeah, people were buying them, and they were like, my boss loved WoW, and we put the dots all over his desk before he came in to work, and he got the joke instantly when he came in.
That's great.
You can just speak the same unspoken language that way.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So
the inside jokes.
So what is the Boomkin, though? I don't understand that.
Boomkin is another meme that's essentially, as I'm sure you probably know because this type of creature has been on many other druid cards over the years, it's actually called a Moonkin. It's actually something that some druids can change the shape into. It has a connection with the astral forces, like sun and moon and all of that stuff.
It's like an owl bear.
Boomkin is the sort of out-of-game reference that a nickname that some players gave him back in the early days. Largely, it was initially kind of a reference to them like running out of mana quickly before that was something that was fixed in the game. And, just also kind of funny. It's just something that they made that, the Boomkin is not a thing in WoW that is at all different from a Moonkin, but they wanted to go with the theme of, the love letter to the history of how this stuff has gone, including the meme culture that surrounded it. And so they just decided to make Boomkin a card.
I see. Cool. All right, so we got another one up here, and I'm sure that there's a story behind this that I have no idea. But tell, don't stand in the fire.
Don't stand in the fire is, I'm not certain if it originates with that same video or not, because I haven't seen the whole thing myself, but I can tell you that it has become so ingrained into internet and MMO culture that even if you're not playing World of Warcraft, if you're playing some other game that's a team-based game where you're fighting bosses, and there is an effect that a boss does an attack where something goes on the ground, and if you're standing in it, then you take damage, it's all referred to as don't stand in the fire. Even if it's not fire at all, if it's some sort of acid damage or corruption or a falling stalactite or whatever. But people, if you are too slow or maybe you got distracted or AFK'd or something, then everyone will scream, type in the chat, get out of the fire, don't stand in the fire. Because it's really annoying on the healers in a group who have the responsibility of keeping everyone alive that... And some people, it's just that they don't understand, especially for someone like, when I was new to MMOs, I didn't quite understand what everyone was saying or whatever. But who doesn't know that you're supposed to get out of the fire or you're too slow or something, then they're trying to heal you, but you are making their job so much more difficult by refusing to move from an area where you are taking damage consistently. And so this is not exclusive at all to Onyxia's Lair, though maybe it originated here, I'm guessing, because this was the first raid and this is such an old classic game, that it's gone way beyond Onyxia's Lair, way beyond even World of Warcraft. This is just a thing that people say. I don't even know if it's just remains within MMOs now. There might be things where people say this to each other in real life or in reference to other things. I don't know, but you know how these things can evolve, take a life of their own, and change meanings over times. And this has been around for a long time.
That's great. That's funny. I'm sure it's it'll be around for a long time to come. All right, looks like we've got one last little story here. So for one of our other legendary cards from this set, our dragon, I don't know how to pronounce it. Hela.
I'm not quite sure either. I've never heard it pronounced, but Hela sounds right to me. So this is another interesting little nod to the way that the raid worked, because Hydra, you probably remember this if you were playing back then. Do you recall having to attune in order to be able to even go into these raids in the first place? There were certain quests that you had to go on before you could even enter them.
Yeah, you needed certain quests to go in, and sometimes you could go in without having all of the quests and not realize it and then miss out on certain things. But yes, there were, you had to go around and collect quests from all over the World of Warcraft. They wouldn't even be like the person standing in front of the door. There would be quests in like Thunderbluff and Orgrimmar, and like they're all over, and you would want to collect these before you entered any like raid or instance.
Right. And so for Onyxius Lair, there was a whole quest chain that you had to play first that led to the scene where you revealed her true identity. And then, as I said, that's the part where, like in Loremaster did it, but in game, players are the ones who managed to figure out, generally through some working with Bolvar, who semi-suspected something, but was also being a bit mind-controlled by her at the time. And but basically, you're eventually able to reveal her true identity. Then she reveals her true dragon form. All of her guards do, and she flies away back to her lair. You have to fight the guards, and then Bolvar gives you, apparently there was one of the ways that she was controlling him was with an amulet that she gave him that got damaged, which is the Drinkfire amulet. That sounds a little familiar. I think I'm getting all this right, at least. been a bit of time. Hydra, correct me if you remember anything different from your play experience all those years ago. But basically, what happens is that sets off another quest chain where you need something that serves as a key to get into Onyxia's Lair, something that's infused with the power of dragons. And so what you end up doing is going on a quest in this area called Winter Spring, where you end up talking to this lady here, who is another dragon in immortal guise. She is a blue dragon. In fact, she is the consort to Malgos. So she is kind of like a queen among blue dragons, really. And she is one of the types of dragons who is, she's very studious, very friendly, but territorial, as blue dragons are, and determined to, work on collecting magical artifacts to make sure they don't fall into the wrong hands and get abused and cause chaos. So, by talking to her, you get quests that help you to repair / obtain the Drakefire amulet, which you need to enter Onyxia's Lair. For this particular one, everyone had to have it. You couldn't have it stashed away in your bank. You couldn't just be in a group with other people who had it. Every single person, in order to get into Onyxia's Lair, had to have the Drakefire amulet. And that's why the flavor text for Drakefire Amulet says, oh, it only took me this many times of going to Winter Spring in order to get it. Because this is the character that you talk to in order to get the thing that allows you to even get into the raid of Onyxia's Lair in the first place. And this is one thing that I didn't know about. I wasn't able to guess what this character was from the art. So there's one very good reason for it, aside from the fact that I didn't know the character. This is the first time that we've ever seen her dragon form in this art, which Hearthstone has done that a few other times, actually, with some other dragon legendary characters, where it's the first time we see them as dragons, and we'd only seen them in their often, human or elf personas in World of Warcraft. Well, I think that's at least partially because those are easier for them to animate because they are just working with existing character models there.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you bring that up though, because I didn't realize it until now, but the art in Drakefire Amulet is actually, Hela in her human form. I mean, it matches spot on the hair, and the robes and the colors and all that. So it's like, oh wow, they really do a deep dive here when they, get into the lore behind the scenes and the artwork, and like I would say, the past dozen lore episodes that we've done, like 99% of the time it matches up like spot on, that you would not know from not playing the game. And like there's so much here that it's just so rich in story and flavor, and so it's pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, like the people who make all this stuff are real passionate nerds as well, and so they detail is really important to them, even more so than to people like us. I'm certain for us, it's really cool stuff. For them, if there's a color that is off place, I'm sure there'd be people who would freak out about that. You know?
They know that we'll poke the holes and everything, so they have to be extremely thorough.
Yes. Yeah. And then we also had a couple other card references with Deep Breath and Scale of Onyxia that were references to Deep Breath. The mage card is one of the abilities that she casts in the boss fight, that if you're tanking, you have to take the full brunt of that and keep it pointed away, and everyone else needs to stay away from the tank, otherwise you get attacked by the flame breath, which does a lot of damage. And you also have to avoid her tail swipe on the other end, which does a bunch of damage. And yeah, like I said, it was a pretty tough fight for people at the time. I'm sure, of course, nowadays you could get on some high-leveled character and go back, and it's nothing. But there is the WoW Classic servers if you want to get that experience. It's preserved in that way. But yeah, the Scale of Onyxia is something that could be skinned in order to get a special cloak that you needed to do other content later on. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all of the references to anything that's distinctly in the game.
That's a lot, though.
There's so many.
Yeah, for one raid battle, I mean, 35 cards, it is quite a bit. And these are things that you really wouldn't know unless you did a deep dive. And so it was fun to do this. And especially from this, like, you know, Luddite perspective, I played enough WoW to get my paladin hero skin. You know, you hit level 20 or whatever, and that was the extent that I played. And so hearing all these stories, like, it just makes me want to play or learn more about it. It's so much fun. So thank you very, very much for doing this deep dive. And again, giant congratulations on accurately predicting the mini set months ago. Gosh, it was probably 3 months ago. You know, way before there was any hint of what it was going to be, or any sort of data mining. And so spot on prediction here. I'm excited. Do you have any predictions for future sets before we jump up and wrap up the show here? Thought I'd ask
really
that.
Give anything right now. Tell you what. First show that I'm back on after they give their little teaser art for the next Hearthstone year, that'll give me something to go on.
Fair enough.
But there's no way that I can predict anything unless I had access to like hack Blizzard files or something.
Once we get those 3 little symbols for each expansion.
Then I'll have something to go on. I may or may not be right, but I have lots of ideas. I have groups of people that I can consult with who are even more nuts about this stuff than I am, but they just don't play Hearthstone. And
we'll see if Prophet Goliath can strike again.
I love it. Well, we're about to kind of wrap up the show. We got a couple, end of the show things that we do every week. But before we do that, Goliath has brought us another parody song, and I'm so excited to listen to it. Yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar, back when we first started the show, we were doing parody songs like every single week, and after doing, probably 40 of them in a row, it was like we sort of burnt out a little bit, and we still try to do them from time to time, but there's a lot of people who love them. And one of the things that has been amazing, Goliath typically will create a song and bring it to the show when he's on, and it's always super fun. The last one that you did was probably that you've outdone them all. It was so incredible. But we have another one tonight, and so we are going to take a brief pause and play it for everybody here, and then we'll wrap up the show. Real excited for that. And so listen in. We're gonna play this. We'll do a couple housekeeping things, and then we've got some exciting stuff that we'll be hosting here right after the show, and we'll get into that in a moment. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and play the song. And for Goliath and Hydra, you won't hear it, but everyone watching live on stream, you will hear it. Those listening on the audio version or watching on YouTube, you will hear it. So going to play that right now. It's called Black Dragon's Fire to the tune of St. Elmo's Fire, so I cannot wait.
Leveling up. You don't know how hard a raid can be. Join the party. Come and slay a black dragon with me. And maybe sometime, if you deal the pain, she'll die before we do. That would be a nice change. Fight the boss. You know you can't quit until it's won. Just swallow marsh. Only you can do what must be done. It will be a tough fight, I can guarantee. She's captured and to win, and we've gotta break him free. I can see Onyxius Lair there, underneath the burning sky. I'll be where the dragon's flying higher and higher. Gotta keep this raid in motion, all I need is a decent team. Just make sure you don't stand in the Black Dragon fire. Burning up, avoid the deep breaths from her flaming maw. From her flaming maw, anywhere helps. Hit it very hard and don't withdraw. We can handle it, we can kill this brute. We'll skin her scales for cloaks and hope for lots of loot. I can see Onyxius Lair there underneath the burning sky. I'll be where the dragon's flying higher and higher. Gonna keep this raid in motion, all I need is a decent team. Just make sure you don't stand in the Black Dragon's fire. We can stop this soul brew mother, we can see this mission through. Watch how quick Black Dragon fire's burning on you. Burning on you. Oh, get out of the fire! For once in my life, maybe this raid won't wipe. It's our time right now. Watch out for that tail swipe. I can see more elves are coming. I can see the healers fall. Now the tanks are overwhelmed, our chances look small. Gotta keep this raid in motion, all I need is a decent team. Just make sure you don't stand in the Black Dragon fire. I can see Onyxius Lair there, underneath the burning sky. I'll be where the dragon's flying higher and higher. Gonna keep this raid in motion, all I need is a decent team. Just make sure you don't stand in the Black Dragon fire. We can stop the soul brood mother, we can see this mission through. Watch how quick Black Dragon fire's burning on you. Burning, burning on you. I can see it burning, burning. Ah, darn it, another wipe. Better luck next time.
That's so good. Well done yet again.
Wow.
Thank you.
So good. Absolutely. So I just like the last time you made one, I just have this big grin on my face the entire time, and it hurts my cheeks. Yeah.
Would you believe that I cranked this out almost entirely this morning?
Wow. Wow.
Well, I had a lot of work this week. I didn't have much time. I've been cooking the concept in my head for a while, but in terms of writing the actual words, I'm like, okay, I gotta have this ready for tonight, and I need to get work taken care of, so let's do this.
That's great. Wow. Well, great work, and
Thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much. That's a ton of fun. You always
I
do an
get
amazing job.
I get so much joy out of sharing these with people. Seeing all of your reactions, enjoying them makes everything worth it and so much more so.
So good. All right, well, we're nearing the end of our show here, and so just to transition, a couple of things that we typically will hit on before we end. One thing that I want to bring up real quick, and Sheep usually does as part of the show, is talking about our Born to be Wild listener series. And so for those of you who may not be familiar, the Born to be Wild listener series is a free Wild Hearthstone tournament series over several weeks with custom deck building restrictions each week. The main series lasts 5 weeks, followed by 3 weeks of playoffs. We are currently in the essentially the playoffs now. So this is, I guess, week 6, which would be the first week of playoffs. So we're in top 8, which I guess would be the quarterfinals. So this week's challenge rather is called Just You Wait Until I Have 150 Mana. Let's see if you get that reference or not. But so this week's challenge is that your deck must equal exactly 150 total mana. So when you look at the mana cost of the various cards, the deck assembled has to essentially it's an average of 35 at 5 mana. Anyways, so if you are watching here live, or if you're listening or watching on YouTube and you want to catch it later, right after the show, we are going to be hosting a match between two of our competitors. And so we've got Maxibon and Diamond, who are going to be facing off against each other tonight. We'll be casting that match here, and so stay tuned for that. If you guys are interested in seeing a fun match, some wacky deck building restrictions, and some great competition here, we've got it all geared up and ready to go. We'll be covering that right after the show. If you're watching this later on YouTube or listening to the audio version of the podcast, check out our YouTube page, and we'll have the match posted there separately. Super cool. If you're interested in participating, again, this season, we're in season 4, is almost over. So we'll have 2 more weeks. So we'll have top 4 and then the top 2. Take a little break, and typically we'll restart after the next set launches, a couple weeks into the new set. But it's an absolute blast. There's 0 cost. It's a lot of fun, and it's just a group of friends hanging out and playing games together with wacky decks that you will not see ever on ladder. So if you're interested in more information, again, check out our website. It's borntobewildhs.com, and there's a listener series page, and that gives you some more information. We've got like links to VODs for past challenges and matches if you're interested in checking those out. So yeah, there you go. There's the spiel. One other thing that we do each week is a weekly listener challenge. And so knowing that this set was coming, we themed last week's challenge and this week's for that matter based on Onyxia's Lair boss raid. Let me pass the mic over to Hydra to jump into last week's winner and then this week's challenge.
Yeah, so last week's challenge, basically what I wanted to see was, like, never mind dropping a big old Onyxia, the first one, or the new Onyxia raid boss. That's cool to kill your opponent with, but what I wanted to see was you kill your opponent with one of the whelps that you summoned, because I mean it's a little bit BM, but that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see get that lethal, kill them with one of the whelps, and I figured also sometimes we need a tiebreaker just because more than one person ends up submitting. So if your whelp's a little bit bigger than a 1/1 or a 2/1, that'll get you, the higher points. Well, Mikkel decided to make it a little bit bigger and decided to make his 1/1 or 2/1 whelp into a 9/9 whelp.
No, man. How do you do that?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. It was a druid deck from what I can tell here, and everything was buffed. So there's a big board happening, but it ended up getting lethal with a 9/9 whelp, not even just a little wee whelp. So that was pretty cool to see. So congratulations to Mikkel. You're going to get 2 Hearthstone packs on us. So we'll reach out to you and we'll get those sent off to you as soon as we can. And you can pick your expansion of choice.
Absolutely.
For this week's challenge, I'm going to give full credit to Nate because Nate put this one together completely.
This looks amazing.
So I'm going to pass the mic to let Nate describe it because he'll probably do a little bit better of a job as he did create this one.
Yeah, so I would try to do something a little bit different this week, and when we do these challenges, we, sometimes it's get lethal with XYZ or let your opponent kill you with XYZ or have the most attack or the biggest weapon or whatever it is. And so, this is not too dissimilar to one of those, but in the spirit of things, the idea is we were talking about the Black Dragonflight. And so what I want to see is how many of the various Black Dragonflight cards or representatives you can get on the board at one time. And so there are a lot of things here, and this graphic might be a little bit small on the screen. I'll post it in the Discord. But essentially there's kind of a point scale divvied up between the various legendary cards and the whelps. And so so here's the challenge. How many of the following can you get on the board at one time? It can be all at once. It can be over multiple turns, but they have to be on the board together. And so you would take a screenshot showing, these minions on the board at the same time. I'm sure that there's some tricks, you can reduce them. You can reduce the mana cost, you can bounce them, you can whatever it is. There's a certain Deathwing that has a death rattle that may help. And so, but there's a point schedule. I initially had thought about making extra points for different cards here, but not wanting to have people with smaller collections not be able to participate, and so didn't want to go crazy with the points for your more obscure legendaries like Wrathion. So 20 points for using either of the hero portraits for Onyxia or Deathwing, and then 10 points for any of the following legendaries. So you've got the 3 different Onyxia cards, you've got the 4 different Deathwing cards, you've got Lady Prestor, you've got Wrathion. You can also play Whelps, but they are worth significantly less points, and so each of these legendaries 10 points each. These Whelps are 2 points for all of the Whelps, with the exception of 2, because they don't quite fit the spirit of while they may count in terms of Hearthstone mechanics and Onyxia as Whelps, they don't quite fit the spirit of it as well. So 2 points for all the Whelps, with the exception of Big Old Whelp and Mechanical Whelp, which are only 1 point, because they're not quite they're there. I mean, they're there, but not really what we're looking for. So it's tricky to try to explain, but there's a graphic on the screen. We'll dump the graphic into the Discord. We can post it on our social media or whatever.
Nefarian's also there for the 10 points, up with the big boys.
My bad. I've been massively sleep deprived over the past week, and so I'm was kind of surprised myself at putting this together in the first place. So, but anyways, it should be fun. I'm curious to see. There's probably a way to do it. Sometimes we come up with these challenges, and I don't even know how they're going to do it, and people will do it. There are ways. So
it's only the cards that are in the graphic here, either characters that are among the significant characters we talked about today, or of the Whelps. So even new dragons that came like Onyxia and Drake or something, those might include your deck to help you with dragon synergies, but they won't count towards this score, correct?
Yeah, just the cards on the graphic here, and really, if you're looking to win this, the points are really all with the the big legendary dragons here that we were talking about in tonight's lore episode. Yeah, the little whelps are cute, but they're not as they don't carry as much weight.
They're not as scary. We're not as afraid of little Wrathion there.
That's right. That's right. So hey, you know what? I'd love to see people do this, to see how many points you can rack up. The way that you go about doing this, same as every other week. Challenges can be played in casual mode or on ladder, but not against a friend, not against the innkeeper. We don't want you to tank your rank, but at the same time, we don't want to make it too easy. And like it or not, the innkeeper will make it too easy. Take a screenshot, post it in our Discord channel, in the weekly challenges page. The winner will be announced on next week's show and will receive 2 Hearthstone packs of their choice on us and be immortalized in the Hall of Fame on our website. Again, I'll post a Discord link here in chat for those people who are watching. And, if you're listening later, you can go to our website and the link is there. So yeah, we'll see what people are able to come up with, and hopefully it's a fun thing. I think that there's some ways. I see Maxi Bond in chat has got some ideas already, and so there's some ways.
And I was only kidding. Wrathion is actually worth a full 10 points. I was only making a joke at his whelp status.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, that wraps it up for tonight's show. Thank you all so very much for joining us. Thank you to everyone that's here live watching. Thank you, Goliath, so much for sharing the stories behind these cards with us. It's an absolute pleasure. It's always fun hearing the stories. The song is still it's going to be stuck in my head all week. I have the privilege of having the MP3.
I did my job.
I will be playing it throughout the weekend as I do my chores and stuff over here. So I'm excited, and we'll get that song posted up on the website as well. And yeah, that's about it. For more wild content, or see where you can find us individually for all of that fun stuff, visit the website at borntobewildhs.com. And again, we'll be back next Friday for more stuff. And I'm sure Sheep will be back, and just, excited for what's in store for us next. So thank you all. Job's done. Bye.
Bye.